Hi, my name is Alex Witney. This is Conspiracy 101, and today, finally, we're going to be talking about David Icke. It's finally here, the moment we talk about the man, the myth, the legend that is David Icke. We've hinted at it in past conspiracy episodes that we would do an entire video just on the man himself. We will be going through him, his history, how he got into conspiracy theories, the conspiracy theories that he does purport. As you probably know, he's big on those reptiles, reptilian humanoids, which we've covered a couple of times. In passing, we haven't done the proper episode on them yet, again, because I wanted to cover David Icke first. We'll go through some of his, what he's famous for, his infamy. We're going to go through all of his books, or at least the majority of them, and talk about them. Props and everything in this episode. And we're going to go through lots of different websites, and we're also going to look at some of the criticisms of him, and whether or not reptilian humanoids is really what he's trying to do. You know, what he's trying to push. At the moment, it's not. And we'll see that. He's very good at moving himself around, changing the goalposts, and coming up with new and interesting ways of seeing the world. Some of which I actually agree with. And one of the reasons that David Icke is so popular, and one of the reasons why I like him so much, is probably because of his past. So let's just get straight into it. This is going to be a long episode, so make yourself a cup of tea. Wikipedia! Why? I had my layouts, had everything all nice, and then you had to go and ruin it. We'll do the top layout. I know it doesn't look as nice. It's one of those things. In case you don't know, David Icke looks like that. And he's relatively famous. He was famous in the UK before I was born. I got to know him through his works in the early 2000s. And that shift from published material, such as books like this, although actually, thinking about it, this might be a self-published book. I think this is one of the self-published ones. But before that, he was actually published as a legitimate author, not doing self-published stuff. And I remember seeing in the early 2000s, so this would have been after he was dropped from his main publisher, a book in Waterstones, which is like, I don't know, the equivalent of Barnes & Noble maybe in the US. And that sort of, to the point of what it's become now, that push from conspiracy theorists being a relatively underground, niche, new age kind of movement kind of thing, maybe in popular culture through mockery or through entertainment, like the X-Files, but not necessarily in people's, consciousness. Early 2000s, with the dawn of the internet becoming more attainable for the majority, I think it really pushed people like David Icke into the mainstream, and that's where he sits today. But like I said, he was famous beforehand, so let's go through his history. We've got lots of different websites set up. Obviously, I'm going to start with Wikipedia. Where else do people on the internet who make videos about things get their information from? Wikipedia. All they do, isn't it? David Vaughan Icke, born 29th of April 1952, is an English conspiracy theorist and a former footballer and sports broadcaster. He has written over 20 books. I haven't read all of them, but I have read the majority. Some of them I don't care for, and most of them you can't get an audiobook version of them. So you can download the like a PDF or a ebook version of them, and then I do like the text to speech, but that's not very good. His latest book, however, is on Audible, and we will get to that because the book's fine, but production-wise, it's awful. He has written over 20 books, self-published since the mid-90s. We talked briefly about that, we'll get into more about it in a minute, and spoken in more than 25 countries. His lectures are something that has made him famous as well. It's very easy to get into a trap of watching a 12-hour David Icke lecture. And that's one of the reasons why he's so popular, is because he is so good at talking. He is his personality, his accent. You know, a lot of the UK accents we have a lot can be quite harsh and not very easy to listen to, especially for audiences abroad. He's from the Midlands. He's from Coventry or Leicester. And so his accent is a Midland accent, but it's not like a harsh Midlands accent. It's a very soft accent, and it's very easy to listen to. But he's not monotonous, which some people from the Midlands can sound a bit like they're just going through the things, blah, blah, like that. And that's one of the reasons why he's so popular. You can watch him for 9 hours on a video or in live at some of his lectures, and be like, well, how did I watch that? How did I watch? And it's because he's got so much to talk about, and he talks about it so well. Okay. This brief synopsis covers some of the points we're going to get into. In 1990, Icke visited a psychic who told him he was on Earth for a purpose and would receive messages from the spirit world. This led to him to claim in 1991 to be the son of a Godhead, son of the Godhead. His interpretation of that is actually what quite a few people believe in. They might not know it, but quite a few people believe in variations of what he was espousing in the early 90s. He just did it in a really awkward way, and which wasn't helped by, and the world would soon be devastated by tidal waves and earthquakes. Okay, you could say that at any time, and that will happen. That's just part of the Earth. There will be earthquakes and tidal waves. He repeated this on BBC show Wogan. His appearance led to public ridicule. I'm not going to show the clips, because this is going to get flagged by YouTube anyway, from what I'm talking about and what we will be talking about in the future. And but I will link in the description the video, the Wogan interview, and it's not that bad. He in his various books reiterates how, you know, the public ridicule, the way he was treated by the public afterwards. And during the interview by the crowd that was there. And it's really interesting to see watching it back, because what he says isn't that weird, especially maybe in 30 years ago it was really, really weird and it was way out there and too far gone. But in modern parlance, it's just like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, all right, yeah, no, if you believe that, that's fine. It's that kind of mentality. It's like, it's not that different from getting some, I don't know, Anglican church person just to go on there and talk about his beliefs and his dogma. It would be just as odd, and it's very strange to watch him talk about stuff that I believe in. If you don't know, if you haven't watched videos, I'm a Christian, but I don't really proselytize, and some of what he talks about is actually how I picture and how I perceive God to be, in that God is everything, we are God, therefore we are sons of God. And the Bible kind of hints at that in certain places, and other religious groups have taken that as well and ran with it. But basically, this is all God. There is no just one thing, person, old man with a beard, Monty Python style. Everything is God, and what we are doing is basically experiencing life, this world, through individual means, so that God, us, everything can experience life, can come up with, can enjoy what's going on. And obviously that leads to lots of questions about good and bad and free will and all that kind of stuff, which is a massive rabbit hole to get into. But that's basically what he was espousing in that Wogan interview, that we're all connected, we're all part of God, whatever God may be. And through this, he has had revelation that there was going to be earthquakes and tidal waves and the world was going to end. Oh no, might end. I think he made that a couple of times he said that. It might end, which usually means it won't. Okay. Books Icke wrote over the next 11 years developed his worldview on a New Age conspiracy. So this is often put in with the conspiracies, the New Age conspiracies, just because in the 90s New Age was popular, and that's using New Age as kind of like a hokey term. It doesn't really mean much nowadays, but it's kind of that sort of East meets West theology and ideas, and it's hard to describe and pinpoint, but most people know what you mean when you say New Age. Reactions to an endorsement of an anti-Semitic forgery, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, in The Robots' Rebellion, 1994, and in the And the Truth Shall Set You Free, 1995, led his then publisher to decline further books, and he has self-published since then. So he was famous enough, and we'll get to why he was famous, to get books published in this sort of area, and it's all over computers. My computer might die. Don't worry about it. He was able to get books published, but then he endorsed a specific forgery, which has become quite infamous now. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's just an anti-Semitic propaganda. And in the same way that Graham Hancock pushed was it a polar switching? It was, what was it? It was in one of his earlier books, Graham Hancock pushed a geological theory that it has been disproven beyond a reason, really properly lambasted. And he had to move away from that. And I think, as far as I can tell, David Icke has done the same. He's realised that it was a mistake that was, faked, or it wasn't a very good idea, like in terms of Graham Hancock, and he's moved on. But we'll see. Icke contends that the universe consists of vibrational energy and infinite dimensions sharing the same space. He claims that there is an interdimensional race of reptilian beings, the Archons, or Anunnaki, which have hijacked the Earth. Further, a genetically modified human Archon hybrid race of reptilian shapeshifters, the Babylonian Brotherhood, Illuminati, or Elite, manipulates events to keep humans in fear, so that the Archons can feed off the resulting negative energy. He claims that many public figures belong to the Babylonian Brotherhood, and propel humanity towards a global fascist state or New World Order, a post-truth era ending freedom of speech. He sees the only way to defeat such archontic influences is for people to wake up to the truth and fill their hearts with love. Critics have accused Icke of being anti-Semitic and a Holocaust denier, with his theories of reptilians serving as a deliberate code. Icke strongly denies these claims. We'll get to that. We'll go through all of this. But let's start at the beginning of that. Vibrational energy. String theory is a popular theory to do with multiverses and universes, and how maybe the very big can influence the very small, and that's all to do with vibrations. Problem is, when you get really complicated theoretical physics, and you try and dumb it down to a level that myself and Mr. Icke would probably understand, maybe there's some misunderstandings there. I don't know. He was obviously massively influenced as well by a certain film, The Matrix, and I understand the need to use analogies that people would understand. But he does really, really like the film The Matrix, and I think that might have moulded his views in certain ways about the world we see around us. The Archons, Anunnaki, he talks about them a lot. This is the kind of thing that was we talked about in the Giants episode. The Nephilim, the half angels, half man in the Bible. Illuminati, New World Order. We've been through that a little bit. But again, was the Illuminati a thing, or was it a joke in a Playboy issue? It's hard to know. Reptiles, reptilian shapeshifters. We talked about that briefly in the Aliens episode. And then it covers a whole remit, and this is why some of his lectures take 12 hours to go through, because he really does cover literally everything. And that's what we're going to do today. So let's get started. Okay, so early life. There's a really good article on Sky News, which is surprising, which has some really nice pictures, and we'll go through it about his early life and his broadcasting career. But let's just read through this briefly. So he was the middle son of 3 boys. He was born in Leicester, and he served. His dad served. Was it dad? Yeah, his dad Beric. That's a strange name, isn't it? Served in Royal Air Force as a medical orderly. Blah 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 blah. He was relatively poor. He talks about that a lot. He was a poor person. Grew up in a council estate. To say we were skint, he wrote in 1993, is like saying it is a little chilly at the North Pole. David Icke is perfect for quotes. And in season 1, I used to have like stuff flash on the screen, and we used to use David Icke quote because it was just perfect. But yeah. He used to hide when the councilman came around for rent. He was poor. Football was his only escape. He made no effort at school. He left without any GCSEs, I think, or O-levels. He failed an 11 plus exam, so you still have them in some places, but 11 plus is basically decides which school you're going to go to. You're going to go to a school where you do academic stuff, so that maybe you're going to college and then university, or do you go to a school that's mainly going to focus on like trade and physical stuff, like you're going to become a bricklayer or a car mechanic, that kind of thing. But he was relatively good at football, and he was a goalkeeper. Again, if you read his books, especially his latest one, it goes through all the different things that happened that enabled him to forge the career he was, and he sees them as not coincidences, which is interesting. Unfortunately, he got really early rheumatoid arthritis, which is, if arthritis is just inflammation of the joints, and if you get it really bad, it's hard to walk, it's hard to do anything. He got it in his left knee, and then it spread to his knees, ankles, elbows, wrists, hands, and basically he couldn't make a career out of football. He was very good. He was clearly very good. He played his senior career at Hereford United, which are hilarious because they have a bull for their logo. Is that a bull or is that just a cow? It's just a cow, isn't it? Okay. But yeah, professional football. He was a professional footballer, and maybe if he didn't get arthritis, he might have been able to proceed into the top leagues. He was good. People liked him. He was good. But it got really bad, and he couldn't play. So, what do you do when you can't play football? You become a reporter. That's happened to lots of different famous footballers, and some of the best reporters are footballers who didn't really make it or didn't, go so far. And some of them are actually, if you look at someone like Gary Lineker, are really good footballers as well. So you can get a mix, but usually that's what happens. They either go into, there's two avenues, isn't there, for the ex-footballer in the UK. And when I say football, I mean soccer. It's either coaching or TV, newspapers, that kind of thing, because it's so popular here. There's lots of work. He had 2 kids with his first wife, 3 kids, 1 daughter, 2 sons. And even though the couple divorced in 2001, she continued being Icke's business manager, which I think is a really good testament to him. Sometimes with these kind of people, when we're looking into them, and it's the same with Graham Hancock actually, and his wife, who he's been married to for like 30 years, 40 years. You look at the old documentaries from the 80s, she's there taking pictures. When that kind of thing happens, when someone gets a divorce, usually it's quite bitter. And for them to be still friends shows that Icke is clearly a relative, a nice person behind the scenes. And from what I've read and what I know about, his beliefs might be something you don't agree with, but I think as a person, I think he's all right, isn't he? He's all right. So, the loss of Icke's position with Hereford meant he and his wife had to sell their home, and for several weeks they lived apart, each moving in with their parents. Icke found a job as a reporter with a weekly Leicester Advertiser through a contact who was a sports editor at the Daily Mail. Obviously, when you're in football, lots of contacts. So he did work for BBC Radio Leicester, he'd work in Birmingham, and in his book he talks about wanting to get good at that and go on to working for BBC, working for national television. He did work in Saudi Arabia for 2 months with their national team, which would have been really weird to see all the different universes branching off this one. David Icke going off into becoming a coach, and I can just imagine him on the sidelines shouting at some Championship or League 2 team, or League 1 team, and being the manager of a team. I can imagine that. But he didn't like it, and he returned and eventually got lots of big breaks. And because of his now, what we know him for, his ability to speak, his ability to present, his ability to present, that's a good way of putting it. He managed to get various different get on various BBC programmes, including their flagship one, which was Grandstand. That was the big one he wanted to get on, and he did. He published a book about football, and then he moved to the Isle of Wight. And the Isle of Wight is really interesting. That's where he lives now, I think. And it's an island just south, really just south of the UK, but it's always had sort of weird. It's always been a bit weird. Lots of tax loopholes. A lot of those have been covered up, but I remember buying stuff. You'd buy stuff online, and it would come from there because they don't have to. The tax was different, or the postage tax, or something was weird. It would always come from the Isle of Wight, and tax was one of the reasons why he left the BBC. Why he was asked to politely leave. His contract with BBC was terminated when he initially refused to pay the community charge, also known as the poll tax, and that became the council tax, which Margaret Thatcher's government introduced that year. He ultimately paid it, but his announcement that he was willing to go to prison rather than pay prompted the BBC, by charter, an impartial public service broadcaster, to distance themselves from it. The BBC is paid for by the people, and as such, the people who are presenting and are on BBC can't talk shit about anyone, basically. And it comes up every now and then, especially with social media. You get people on Twitter, saying, sponsoring something or saying something, and it's not allowed, especially when it's to do with the government. So, before we talk about the Green Party, let's have a quick look at Sky News. No, Sky News, leave me alone. So this is about David Icke and the conspiracies, but what it also does is, I had it, but there we go. It has some nice pictures of him in his heyday, which is good to show. So following stints at Oxford United's reserve team in Northampton Town, which is near me, freaky, Arthritis forced Icke to quit the sport at the age of 21 in 1973 whilst at Hereford. Forced out of the game, Icke turned his hand to sports reporting and presenting instead, kicking off at Leicester Advertiser before working his way through various jobs at the BBC, including Newsnight and a co-host of its flagship sports programme, Grandstand. I don't think Grandstand exists anymore. But if you're from the UK, then you might recognise a few of these faces. So, still presenting. And he was presenting, I think he's dead now. But you get the idea. If he hadn't have, again, another universe branching off, not a football coach this time, but a presenter, who knows, maybe even presenting Match of the Day. He was obviously likeable, he was personable, and he was very good at presenting. So this was 1983, there he is in the background now. Icke was sacked by the national broadcaster in 1990 for refusing to pay the poll tax and resigned from the Green Party the following year. So, Green Party, I hear you ask. Yes, that's what he did before. You're expecting... No, wrong one. No, wrong one. There we go. You're expecting it to go straight from sacking the BBC to conspiracies. But no, there was a little intermediate. So Icke began to engage with alternative medicine. You see that a lot with people who have long-term illnesses. Fair enough. If something works, it works. And New Age philosophies in the 1980s in an effort to relieve his arthritis and encourage his interest in green politics. He joined the Green Party and became a national spokesperson within 6 months. He's famous. He's very good at speaking publicly. Makes sense. This was back when the Green Party weren't as big as they are now. I think last election before, they had 1 MP. This Green Party probably wouldn't have even had councillors. His second book, It Doesn't Have to Be Like This, is an outline of his views on environment, and it was published in 1989. So you can see he's still, working. You can see how all the different connections are coming together. Icke wrote in 1989 that in 1989 was a time of considerable personal despair, and it was during this period that he said he began to feel a presence around him. He often describes how he felt it while alone in his hotel room in March 1990. keep in mind these next few passages and what we talk about, because there are two ways to look at this. And finally asks, if there's anybody here, will you please contact me? You are driving me up the wall. Days later, in a newsagent's shop in Ryde, he felt a force pull his feet to the ground and heard a voice guide him towards some books. One of them was Mind to Mind, 1989, by Betty Shine. I've tried to find that book, and you can buy it, but I'm not paying the money they want for it. But that's one of those ones that's always in my head if I'm ever at a charity shop or whatever and I see some like books on psychic stuff. He read the book, then wrote to her requesting a consultation about his arthritis. Icke visited Shine 4 times. During the third meeting on 29th of March 1990, and the reason this is so well documented is because he talks about it a lot in his books. Icke claims to have felt something special like a spider's web on his face, and Shine told him that she had a message from Wang Yi Li of the spirit world. Icke had been sent to heal the earth, she said, and would become famous, but would face opposition. The spirit world was going to pass ideas to him, which he would speak about to others. He would write 5 books in 3 years. In 20 years, a new flying machine would allow us to go wherever we wanted, and time would have no meaning. And there would be an earthquake in unusual places because the inner earth was being destabilized by having oil taken from under the seabed. That's my little geography brain that just sits behind this right. It's left here. Wait, it's right here. Right here. Just there. Little geography brain. It's twitching. In February 1991, Icke visited a pre-Inca Silustani burial ground near Puno in Peru, where he felt drawn to a particular circle of waist-high stones. As he stood in the circle, he had 2 thoughts: that people would be talking about this in 100 years, and that it would be over when it rained. His body shook as though plugged into an electrical socket. He wrote, and new ideas poured into him. And then it started raining, and the experience ended. He described it as the Kundalini, a term from Hindu yoga, activating his chakras, or energy centers, triggering a higher level of consciousness. And this is what began the Turquoise Period, or as Mr. Wogan put it, Turquoise. There followed what Icke called his Turquoise Period. He had been channeling for some time, he wrote, and had received a message through automatic writing that he was a son of the Godhead, interpreting Godhead as the infinite mind. He began to wear only the colour turquoise, often a turquoise shell suit. It looks amazing. A colour he saw as a conduit for positive energy. Be the person you want to be. He also started working on his 3rd book, and the first of his New Age period, The Truth Vibrations. In August 1990, before his visit to Peru, Icke met Deborah Shaw, an English psychic based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. When he returned from Peru, they began a relationship with the apparent blessing of Icke's wife. In March 1991, Shaw began living with the couple, a short-lived arrangement that the press called the Turquoise Triangle. Shaw changed her name to Mauri Shawson, while Icke's wife became Michaela, which she said was an aspect of the Archangel Michael. The relationship with Shaw led to the birth of a daughter in December 1991, although she and Icke had by then ceased their relationship. Icke wrote in 1993 that he decided not to visit his daughter and had seen her only once at Shaw's request. Icke's wife gave birth to a couple's 2nd son in November 1992. Freaky. Green Party resignation and press conference. So in 1991, he resigned from the Green Party conference, telling them he was about to be at the centre of tremendous and increasing controversy. Wow. He saw that one coming, didn't he? A week later, shortly after this, his father died. Icke and his wife, Linda Atherton, along with their daughter and Deborah Shaw, held a press conference to announce that Icke was the son of the Godhead. It's an interesting way to announce it, a press conference. He told reporters that the world was going to end in 1997. It would be preceded by a hurricane around the Gulf of Mexico and New Orleans. Well, that's not really a prediction, is it? Eruptions in Cuba. Disruption in China. Again, not a prediction. A hurricane in Derry, what, North Island? Like Northern Ireland? Okay. So a hurricane in Londonderry, apparently. An earthquake in the Isle of Arran. Where's that? West Coast Scotland, okay. And the information was being given to them by voices and automatic writing. Automatic writing is where you go into a trance and you just sort of scribble, and then you read it afterwards. Los Angeles would become an island. New Zealand would disappear, already has. And the cliffs of Kent would be underwater by Christmas. So, because of that, that led to the Wogan interview. Like I said, the link will be in the description so you can watch it yourself if you want to. He had already sort of built himself up to fall, I feel, and the Wogan interview was interesting. I don't think Wogan was as bad as people have come to think of it as being. He later apologised to Icke and had him back on the show to talk about stuff. He does goad him a little bit. He does play to the crowd a little bit, Wogan, but he lets Icke talk. A lot of interviewers, I think, would just constantly interrupt. But for the most part, he lets Icke talk. And what's interesting is if you don't believe what Icke's saying, that he has come to some understanding that we don't understand, some higher consciousness, then what you're watching is more than likely someone going through a mental health episode. And that's one of the things I wanted you to think about when we're reading this. It does sound like someone's having some kind of psychotic break, especially when you look at sort of what causes those kind of episodes, and it's usually death in the family, father, some kind of work-related incidences. His work, his life was all over the place, and it continued to spiral with children. Having children is very difficult and can be exacerbated by that. Having heard him talk, I'm not sure if it was full-blown psychotic break episode, and I think there was some genuine sort of not knowledge, but maybe understanding him about himself that he came to find. But like I said at the beginning, he's gone about it in a very, very strange way. By going on a national TV program straight away after announcing that you're basically Jesus is never going to go well, is it? So let's talk about what Wikipedia thinks of the Wogan interview. The headlines following Icke's press conference attracted requests for interviews from Nicky Campbell's BBC Radio 1 programme, Terry Wogan's primetime Wogan show, and Fern Britton's ITV chat show. Wogan introduced the 1991 segment with "The world as we know it is about to end," amid laughter from the audience. Of course they're going to react like that. That's natural. You can't put it on people from 1991 that they're being mean to what they're not. He's on Wogan. He's not on a new age chat show. He's not on a chat show that's looking into, oddities from around the world or something like that. He's on a mainstream one where we usually get film stars and actors and musicians. Icke's demurred when asked if he was the son of the Godhead, replying that Jesus would have been laughed at too, and repeating that Britain would soon be devastated by tidal waves and earthquakes. Without these, the earth will cease to exist. So his belief that the earth needed to sort of re-establish itself in some way. It needed to have these cleansing earthquakes or tsunamis. Some Noah's flood rings a bell, in order to come back and be at peace again, or along those lines. When Icke said laughter was the best way to remove negativity, Wogan replied to the audience, "But they're laughing at you, they're not laughing with you." And that's mean, but it was true. And sometimes when you're in that situation, and I feel for Wogan a little bit, but you kind of want the person who's saying they're Jesus, saying all these things, to snap back to reality. Icke was never going to snap back to reality. But I can understand where Wogan was coming from. He wasn't necessarily being a massive dick like other people seem to think he was. Yeah, a little bit apologetics for Wogan, but we'll keep on going. The BBC was criticised for allowing this to go ahead. The Guardian called it media crucifixion, and it does feel a little bit like that. Like, what he's going to go on there to say because he's already, mentioned it in books, did a press conference. It's like having a fight with a disabled person. no one's going to come out well on that, are they? You either beat the disabled person, and well done, you've beaten up the disabled person, or you get beat by the disabled person. It's like, oh, well done, you got beaten up by the disabled person. Like, no one's going to come out of that looking good. And I think they needed to realise that a little bit. And this kind of comes up a lot in the UK with interviews and doing interviews with people and talking to people. Whether things should go ahead when someone's obviously having issues. If you're from the UK, then you know what I'm talking about. It comes up a lot. The interview led to a difficult period for Icke. In May 1991, police were called to the couple's home after a crowd of 100 youths gathered outside, chanting, "We want the Messiah," and "Give us a sign, David." Icke told John Ronson in 2001, "One of my greatest fears as a child was being ridiculed in public, and there it was coming true. As a television presenter, I've been respected. People come up to you in the street and shake your hand and talk to you in a respectful way. And suddenly, overnight, this was transformed into Icke's a nutter. I couldn't walk down any street in Britain without being laughed at. It was a nightmare. My children were devastated because their dad was a figure of ridicule." He had entirely brought that upon himself, though. So you have to be cautious with stuff like that, where he's trying to make out like the world is against him. You don't have to put out a press conference saying that you're Jesus. You don't have to go on a primetime TV show telling people that there's going to be earthquakes and the world's going to end. In 2006, Wogan interviewed Icke again for a special Wogan Now and Then series. Wogan was apologetic for his conduct in the 1991 interview. However, in his autobiography, Mustn't Grumble, Wogan described Icke as being a ranting demagogue, convinced we were all manipulated sheep. Which, yeah, that sounds fair. Okay, so writing and lecturing. This goes into the various books that he's written. And I think what we'll do is we'll come back to that one, but we will go to, let's pause this, and let's go to, there is a book, here it is. So this is called The Culture of Conspiracy, Apocalyptic Visions in Contemporary America. And this book contains lots of different stuff. It's kind of, you'll see it a lot in various different, not news articles, periodicals, journals and stuff, which we'll talk about in a bit. Peer-reviewed articles that are written about David Icke. It's incredible. So A Cultural Conspiracy, this is by Michael Barkan. And if we scroll down, there should be an article about... So this is about Jim Keith and David Icke. UFOs meet the New World Order. So if we scroll past the Jim Keith bit, and we go to the David Icke bit, this basically explains his books, his writing, and does it in a little bit better way than the Wikipedia article does. So we'll go back to the Wikipedia article and go through some of his books and the ones that I've read. What you'll find is that his books... Drink them if you got them. His books repeat themselves a lot. A lot of the time, although they may be rewritten, it's treading over the same ground. However, there are minute differences, and that can be hard to see even when you're reading through them all. However, this does quite a good job of portraying those differences. And then we'll go back and talk about the anti-Semitism stuff a little bit more when we get to the arguments against him, basically. So let's start. David Icke, 1952, is far more flamboyant figure. So a lot of this is in reference to the previous person. He achieved a measure of celebrity in Britain prior to his association with either conspiracy theories or aliens, and his gift for self-promotion has extended his audience throughout the English-speaking world. He had already had 2 public careers prior to the involvements that made him a significant figure among conspiracists. He first achieved notice as a sportscaster on the BBC 2 television network. Don't know why it says BBC 2. After he and the BBC parted on unfriendly terms, Icke became public spokesman for the Green Party in Great Britain. His flair for dramatic led the Observer newspaper to characterise him as the Greens' Tony Blair. There you go, there's another universe splitting off. We could have had David Icke as Prime Minister. Icke's life took a dramatic turn in 1990 when he consulted a psychic healer who alleviated for symptoms of his rheumatoid arthritis. So yeah, that's another reason why I think he put so much faith in her, and why what she said he felt was so true is because his arthritis did get better. During an early healing session, the healer began transmitting spirit messages that proclaimed Icke a healer who is here to heal the earth, and he will be world famous. Stimulated by his prophecy in 1991, he felt an enormous urge to visit Peru, a local long favoured by occultists for the supposed strength of its spiritual forces and the ability to have ayahuasca. Not surprisingly, Icke claimed to have undergone an intense experience there, during which energy was pouring from my hands with fantastic power. My feet continued to burn and vibrate for some 24 hours. The immediate effect of the Peruvian vision was to motivate him to form a New Age missionizing, uncongenial to both the BBC and the Green Party. Shortly thereafter, he began a new career as a writer and a lecturer. Icke's evolving worldview took the form of a New Age conspiracism outlined in 4 books published in a 7-year period: The Robots' Rebellion, and The Truth Will Set You Free, The Biggest Secret, and Children of the Matrix. Children of the Matrix. I'm just going to keep... I'm not really going to reference it or actually look in it, but it's just nice to have a prop. It's just nice having something there that you can hold up. Although they appeared within a few years of one another, all describe a purported cabal of world-dominating evildoers, the volumes contain significant differences. That's what we're going to get into. In particular, Icke's characterization of the evil forces changed, with an increasing emphasis on the role of non-humans. The conspiracy theory in the Robots' Rebellion did not differ significantly from what might be described as a generic New World Order concept. Humanity is in the thrall to manipulators who keep us from reaching a condition of full freedom. Icke refers to these plotters as the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood consists of an enormous network of secret societies, as whose apex stand the Illuminati. This sect of nested conspiracies achieves its goals through control of the world financial system and its mastery of mind control techniques. Its goal is a world government to which every continent would be subordinate, a plan that, according to Icke, had been laid out in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Although Icke is careful to suggest, in the manner of Cooper, that the Illuminati rather than the Jews wrote the Protocols, this is the first of a number of instances in which Icke moves into the dangerous terrain of anti-Semitism. The ideas presented in the Robots' Rebellion reprise the earlier New World Order concepts described in Chapter 3. They differ little from the material found in such authors as Webster or Pat Robertson. There is little concerning UFOs, beyond a brief but sympathetic reference to Cooper's claim that earthly conspirators have entered into an alliance with extraterrestrials. Although, and The Truth Will Set You Free, was published only a year later, it significantly extends the ideas presented in the Robots' Rebellion. In addition to more anti-Semitic material discussed further in Chapter 9, it greatly elaborates the concept of a brotherhood into 2 ways. First, by a much more detailed description of the secret societies that alleged compose its membership, and second, by explicitly linking the brotherhood to extraterrestrial masters. Extraterrestrial stops being used by Icke, and I think he prefers interdimensional, something along those lines. The global elite, Icke wrote, operates the Brotherhood, and through the Brotherhood, the world, by controlling a pyramid of manipulation. The pyramid consists of a set of hierarchical structures, each of which dominates a sphere of human life: banking, business, military, politics, education, media, religion, intelligence agencies, medicine and drug companies, and illegal drugs and organised crime. The lower a functionary is in any hierarchy, the less he or she is aware of carrying out the policies of the Brotherhood. This segmented view of the conspiracy was not particularly original, but allowed Icke to present separate descriptions of each sector. The originality of his thesis lay in his new conviction that there is a layer of control above the global elite itself. The topmost level of the conspiracy Icke calls the prison warders. He makes clear his view that the prison warders are extraterrestrials, without being specific about where they came from. A pyramidal structure of human beings has been created under the influence and design of the extraterrestrial prison warders and their overall master, the Luciferic consciousness. They control the human clique at the top of the pyramid, which I have dubbed the global elite. The means by which these non-earthly prison warders exercise their control is left somewhat vague. In his work, Icke began to speak in New Age terms of negative energy and blocking vibration. By utilizing these forces, the aliens have imprisoned us in a frequency net thrown around this planet. You can see how this is all evolving and coming from the original, what we were talking about, his original sort of epiphanies. One consequence of Icke's new conviction was a greatly heightened interest in UFOs, I'm sorry, Mr. Hancock, UFOs, and their occupants. He now spoke of the UFO cover-up. Icke believed that only such a cover-up could keep human beings from breaking out of vibratory prison. Once the truth was known, Icke believed the power of the global elite and its masters would be broken. There was little to prepare Icke's readers for his third book, The Biggest Secret. The cover proclaimed the book that will change the world, the blockbuster of all blockbusters. For in addition to the usual material on the Rothschilds and the Trilateral Commission, Icke now claimed to identify the non-humans he regarded as the cause of humanity's enslavement. The essence of the book's central thesis is as follows. The extraterrestrials come from the constellation Draco. They are reptilians who walk erect and may appear humanoid on a casual inspection. They live not only on the planets from which they came, but under the Earth itself, in a hidden world of caverns and tunnels. There may be, wrote Icke, both native reptilians and outer space reptilians on Earth at the same time. They control the global elite and the Brotherhood by a combination of methods. They have crossbred with human beings, creating creatures that look human but are inwardly reptilian. These hybrids are possessed by their full-blood reptilian masters. The hybrid bloodlines continually interbreed, moreover, so that the Brotherhood is not simply non-human, but is also the product of international manipulated unions. Children of the Matrix. I'm going to pick it up every single time. You don't even see it in that picture, can you, when I do it like that, because it's not on the film. Oh, I got one of his books, just the one. Yeah, buying the actual print books is so much more expensive than actually buying the audiobooks or the PDF ebook versions that he offers. Which is, that makes sense. Where were we? Children of the Matrix is essentially an elaboration of the reptilian thesis presented in The Biggest Secret. Again, like it all sort of builds, each book builds on the last, and it contains a lot of the same information. In it, Icke integrates the concept of a malevolent serpent race with the more conventional conspiracism contained in his earlier work, such as And the Truth Will Set You Free. Presenting the reptilians as the capstone of conspiratorial structure, replete with the usual collaborators like the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, and the Trilateral Commission. Icke also increases his emphasis on the other dimensional origins of the reptilians. So that's changed, it's not extraterrestrial anymore, it's other dimensional. They supposedly come from and return to another dimension, providing the ultimate concealment. The resemblance of these ideas to ones Keith was developing later in his life is clear, but it is less clear whether Icke was aware of Keith's speculations. That happens a lot. That happens a lot where two people come up with the same idea independently from each other. Icke's notions expressed in The Biggest Secret and Children of the Matrix are bizarre even when viewed in the larger context of contemporary conspiracy theories. As the next chapter illustrates, he certainly did not invent the concept of evil inner Earth reptilians, an idea that spread rapidly in the 1990s, but no one had done more to spread it. That's the big difference. Within the months of The Biggest Secret's publication, he claimed 30,000 copies in print. At the same time, Icke conceded that the idea of reptilians operating from the fourth and fifth dimensions was not one that had gained general acceptance, even among fellow conspiracy theorists. Some of the most fierce abuse that I have had since the book came out has not been from the public, actually. It's been from some other conspiracy researchers who can't get their head around anything beyond the physical. Icke's increasing insistence that the evildoers come from another dimension has a number of advantages. It allows him to skirt such embarrassing questions as what part of the universe they come from and how they got here, and it also allows them to violate the laws of nature, at will by suddenly changing shape or location. At the same time, Icke can castigate his critics as stodgy materialists unable to grasp a new paradigm. Paradigm is a word that conspiracy theorists, conspiratorial people love. It's a great word. Icke has moved aggressively to increase the size of his audience with an elaborate website. It is. Right, let's just briefly talk about that so I can get rid of that. His website is very elaborate. It has lots of different articles, news articles. Has lots of different videos. If you go to Iconic, it's like his own like Netflix, little mini Netflix. Quite a lot of people have that. Is it Band Video? Yep, Band.video is Alex Jones' version. David Icke has his own one there. You can buy, stuff, which is fine. And you can subscribe to the newsletter. It has a lot of different articles. It has its own forum, its own shop. The Illuminati are throttling my internet. Where you can buy the books, print on demand, ebooks, audiobooks, etc. Health and wellbeing course. And this is very important because he has been blocked and banned from most social media, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, at some point. But what it doesn't do, unlike most other figureheads of conspiratorial, of conspiracies, and in that kind of vein, I know I keep talking about Graham Hancock, but it's because it's the only other video that I've done on a specific person like this. And so it's easier for me to remember how that was. But his website has information about him. It has relevant tidbits, bits about his book. Nowhere I can find on this version of the David Icke website is like an about section. There's a little bit about David Icke, who he is, why, what his books are about, etc., etc. And maybe he hides that behind a paywall with the Iconic stuff. I don't know. But it's very interesting, and that's the last time that we're gonna go on that. We're gonna look at his website because I don't like it. It's not very good. It's not a very good website. And you know how important that is to me. Books, websites. Website and speaking tours in North America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, as well as publishing books and videotapes. He speaks variously to New Age believers seeking spiritual enlightenment and growth, to conspiracists and conspiracy-minded ufologists, and to those on the anti-government right. Can you see how he's spreading a wide net there? And that's very interesting because I think that's helped him stay in the public consciousness. The promoters of the 2001 lecture in Fort Worth, Texas, advertised Icke as someone who teaches that every person, regardless of religious upbringing, corporate entanglements, need to search for the truth, in an enterprise that includes developing the spiritual side of every person seeking the truth. In 1996, by contrast, he spoke at the Reno, Nevada Constitutional Justice Conference, dominated by opponents of the Brady handgun law, including Mullins and white nationalist attorney Kirk Lyons. Icke has an ongoing relationship with the editors of Phoenix Publications, whose convoluted story is told in Chapter 9, with published purported communications received from the Pleiadian extraterrestrial named Haton. These publications, based at various times in Tehachapi, California, and Las Vegas. Okay, that's not a place in California. Okay, Tehachapi? Tehachapi, California, and Las Vegas represent the most openly anti-Semitic segments of ufology. They are marked by an obsessive fear of a global Jewish conspiracy against which the extraterrestrial, called Haton, warns virtuous earthlings. Icke was interviewed at length in these journals in 1997 and 1999. In 1997, he lectured in Yale, Washington, at the Valvarians, a leading-edge research group, whose elaborate fusion of ufology and New World Order was described earlier. Icke's relationship with militias and Christian patriots is complex. The London Evening Standard reported correctly in 1995 that uncanny parallels are emerging between Icke's thoughts and the writings of senior figures in the armed militia movements in America. While Icke has clearly sought to cultivate the extreme right, however, The effort has not been without tension, largely a product of the New Age baggage attached to his political ideas. As a result, his attitude about American radical right seems to be a mixture of admiration and frustration. The positive side of Icke's ambivalence lies in his belief that Christian patriots are the only Americans who know the truth about the New World Order. I have great sympathy in the way that they are trying to expose some levels of the conspiracy. He calls the radical right a movement that has understood many elements of the global conspiracy and admires the spotlight for its excellent research and long and proven record of accuracy. On the other side, Icke sees Christian patriots as dogmatists who are nearly as rigid as their adversaries. He claims to have told one of them, "I don't know which I dislike more, the world controlled by the Brotherhood or the one you want to replace it with," presumably a world dominated by Christian fundamentalism. He is also put off by the right's belief that spirituality, as expressed metaphysically in the New Age stuff, is the bloody devil. So yeah, really interesting, because he's obviously trying to cast a wide net with his conspiracies and what he believes in order to garner as much of an audience as he possibly can for what he believes is the truth. Unfortunately, that's caught in that a few unsavory figures, and this book goes into details more about that, but I really like this sentence, and I think I'm going to leave this book on this sentence. It is clear that neither Keith nor Icke has been a direct participant in the radical right. He is not their figurehead. He doesn't want to be their figurehead, but there's just a lot of overlap, and because of that, he's capitalizing on it and trying to make money from it. Whether, he's consciously doing that or unconsciously doing it, that's what's happening. But yeah, this is a really good book. Go check it out. It has a lot more information than... It's quite old now. I think it's 2003. Yeah. A Culture and Conspiracy, Apocalyptic Visions in Contemporary America. Very good. Would highly recommend. Right. So, let's get back to his Wikipedia and just see... early books. Wogan Interview separated Icke from his previous life, so he had that sort of era before Wogan and era after Wogan. Truth Vibrations, the books came out. The Robots Rebellion. So in 2001 documentary about Icke, John Ronson, who's relatively famous, does lots of books, cited this cartoon, Rothschild, in 1898 by Charles Leandri, arguing that Jews have long been depicted as lizard-like creatures who are out to control the world. So that's an old depiction. Yeah, that's probably the best way of putting it. So let's briefly talk about the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It is an anti-Semitic literary forgery, probably written in the direction of Russian secret police in Paris, purporting to reveal a conspiracy by Jewish people to achieve global domination. It was exposed as a forgery in 1920 by Lucien Wolff, and the following year by Philip Graves in The Times. Once exposed, it disappeared from mainstream discourse until interest was renewed by the American far right in the 1950s. Interest in it was further spread by conspiracy groups on the internet. Icke's reliance on the protocols in Robots Rebellion is the first of a number of incidents in which Icke moves into the dangerous terrain of anti-Semitism. The Robots Rebellion was greeted with dismay by the Green Party's executive. Despite the controversy over the press conference and the Wogan interview, they had allowed Icke to address the party's annual conference in 1992, a decision that led one of its principal speakers, Sarah Parkin, to resign. But after the publication of the Robots Rebellion, they moved to ban him. Icke wrote to The Guardian in September 1994, denying that Robots Rebellion was anti-Semitic and rejecting racism, sexism and prejudice of any kind, while insisting that whoever had written the protocols knew the game plan for the 20th century. After reading his stuff, it's really hard to not think that maybe the reptiles are an allegory for Jewish people. But considering what else he says, in terms of vibrations, we're all this, very one love, very hippie, very new age, he doesn't seem like the kind of person who would be racist or sexist or anti-Semitic. But it's hard to judge people just on what they say, isn't it? Their actions can often speak louder. So, self-publishing. Okay, let's not read that. Icke's next manuscript, And the Truth Will Set You Free, contained a chapter questioning aspects of the Holocaust, which caused a rift with his publisher Gateway. In the book, Icke suggested that Jews funded the Holocaust by quoting and seconding Gary Allen's claim that the Warburgs, part of the Rothschild Empire, helped finance Adolf Hitler. In his views, schools indoctrinated children in the unchallenged version of events, while the mainstream account of the Holocaust, thanks to their use of free copies of the film Schindler's List. So after borrowing 15 grand from a friend, Icke established Bridge of Love Publications, later called David Icke Books, and he subsequently self-published all his books, which I think makes things a little bit easier to do. But according to Lewis and Kahn, Icke aimed to consolidate all conspiracy theories into one project with unlimited explanatory power. His book sold 140,000 copies between 1998 and 2011, a value of over £2 million. He's clearly making money from this. His tours are very popular. He sells the DVDs, he publishes stuff. He's always on podcasts, he's always being interviewed. He's got lots of documentaries. If you go on YouTube and type his name in, things like the Vice documentary are the first things that come up. He's popular. This is working for him. And what he's able to do, because of all the conspiracies that he's throwing the net over, he's able to sort of highlight the ones that will appeal to the audience that he's speaking to. Been translated into 11 languages. That is amazing. 600,000 hits per week to his website, which makes sense because the website is kind of like a news website. Yeah, politics and stuff, lecturing. Yeah. Okay. Right, let's have a look at the specific conspiracy theories that he purportedly has knowledge of. Icke combines New Age philosophical discussion about the universe and consciousness with conspiracy theories about public figures being reptilian, humanoids, and paedophiles. He argues in favour of reincarnation. That's something he's purported for a long time. A collected consciousness that has intentionality is the power of minds to be about something, to represent or stand for things. Modal realism. The other possible worlds exist alongside ours, and the so-called law of attraction, that good and bad thoughts can attract experiences. So this really links in with something that I've known a lot about for a while called noetics. Noetics is a proposed branch of metaphysics concerned with the study of the mind as well as the intellect. So there are lots of different versions of this. Noetic consciousness is probably the one. Oh, noetic sciences is the one I'm most interested in. And it's the idea that your brain is active, right? Your brain is active. And stuff's happening physically. Stuff's happening in the brain in order to speak, in order to think. It's not, nothing's happening, it's not, things are actually moving around. There's neurons firing, there's electrical activity in the brain that's making us think, making us, move, talk. So, does that have an impact on the outside world? If a large group of people are thinking the same thought, can that have an influence on the outside world? Because something's actually happening. And by enough people thinking certain things or doing certain things, does that have a physical impact on the world around us? And that's basically what noetic sciences is trying to understand. The easiest answer is probably no, it doesn't, because they're so minimal. The interactions that are happening in your brain, the electrical signals are so small that even with lots of people, it won't make a difference. But I like to think of it as, when people say, oh, pray for me, or I'm sending prayers, does that actually make a difference? Could that make a difference if a large population of people are thinking about something, are praying for something to happen? Could that influence the physical world that we live in? And that's one variant of what David Icke likes to talk about. Biggest secret, he introduced the idea of prominent figures derived from the Anunnaki, a reptilian race from the Draco constellation. We've talked about that. He talks about the moon and later Saturn as a source of the holographic experiences broadcast by reptiles. Humanity interprets it as reality. Again, this is a kind of mixing of real science and and his beliefs about that real science, what we see, it's our interpretation of it, isn't it? What we see is visible light, whereas other animals might see something different. If you're just picking up, say, radio waves, you'd see the world in a different way. So what we see and what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, is that real, or is that a holographic experience akin to the Matrix film? Icke is also an opponent of the scientific method, describing it as bollocks in 2013. When asked by the Sunday Times to explain the existence of television, he said, "It's not that all science is bollocks, but rather the basis of the way and noetics have gone to my brain. So I wonder if this has noetics in it. Right, let's try that again. But rather the basis of the way science judges reality is bollocks. He also thinks climate change is a hoax. Again, he just likes clipping things on top. Infinite dimensions. So we talked about this vibrational energy. He thinks we're all vibrations, which, again, it's one of those theoretical physics things at the very base of atoms, and when you go into your... What are atoms made out of? What are they called? Yeah. Okay, what are electrons and protons and all that made out of? Quantum mechanical, spin, Planck constant. Oh my god, look at all this words. There's just a wall of words. What am I thinking of? Quarks, that's what I'm thinking of, quarks. Yeah, quarks. And then you go down into that and you get even more crazy stuff, etc., etc., etc. So, vibrations seems to be the building blocks of reality. And he's sort of taking that into a different direction. Our five senses can only access a time and frequency range, like a radio tuned to one station. In the space you're occupying now are all the radio and television stations broadcasting to your area. You can't see them, and they can't see each other, because they are on different wavelengths. But move your radio dial, and suddenly there they are, one after the other. It is the same with reality we experience here as life. What we call the world and the universe is only one frequency range in an infinite number sharing the same space. And this is the kind of same thing that people will explain ghosts and phenomena like that. But different wavelengths, different universes interacting with each other, or different planes of existence interacting with each other. Icke believes that time is an illusion. There is no past or present. There is only the infinite now is real, and that humans are an aspect of consciousness or infinite awareness, which he describes as the all that there is, has been, and ever can be. Reptoid humanoids. Icke believes an interdimensional race of reptilian beings called Archons have hijacked the Earth and are stopping humanity from realizing the true potential. He claims that they are the same beings as the Anunnaki, deities from the Babylonian creation myth, and the Elis, and the fallen angels or watchers, who mated with human women in the biblical Apocrypha. He believes that genetically modified human Archon, a hybrid race of shape-shifting reptilians known as the Babylon Brotherhood, or the Illuminati, manipulate global events to keep humans in constant fear so the Archons can feed off the negative energy this creates. In The Biggest Secret, Icke identifies the Brotherhood as a descendants of reptilians from the constellation Draco, and said they live in caverns inside the Earth. Icke claims the first reptilian breeding programs took place 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, perhaps creating Adam and the third and latest 7,000 years ago. He claims that hybrids of the third program, which are more Anunnaki than human, currently control the world. He writes in The Biggest Secret, the Brotherhood which controls the world today is a modern expression of the Babylonian Brotherhood of the reptilian Aryan priests and royalty. Icke states that it came together in Sumer after the flood, but originated in the Caucasus. He explains that when he uses the term Aryan, he means white race. Yeah, go on, let's talk about reptiles. So reptilian, we've talked about this briefly, and I think we'll have its own episode on this specific version of reptilian humanoids. But we talked about it briefly in our aliens episode. So reptilians, reptoids, archons, reptloids, saurians, draconians, or lizard people. I suppose reptilian humanoids prominent role in fantasy science fiction. The idea of reptilians was popularized by David Icke, a conspiracy theorist who claims shapeshifting reptilian aliens control Earth. There you go, some kind of version of that. Michael Barkin again, we're talking about. So the first seemingly published story or text about this was a Weird Tales by Robert E. Howard, The Shadow Kingdom, which drew on theosophical ideas of lost worlds of Atlantis and Lemuria, particularly Helen Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, written in 1888, with reference to its dragon men who once had a mighty civilization on the Lemurian continent. Howard's serpent men were described as humanoids with human bodies and snake heads, who were able to imitate humans at will, and who lived in the underground passages, used their shape-changing and mind control abilities to infiltrate humanity. And then serpent men, themes from H.P. Lovecraft was obviously, Yep, David Icke. Absolutely love this. Do we really need another reptilian shapeshifter as president? That is just one of the best signs. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go into lots of detail about that, but that is a thing, which we've talked about already. Icke has stated that reptilians come from not only another planet, but also another dimension, the lower level of the fourth dimension, the lower astral dimension, the one nearest the physical world. From this dimension, they control the planet, although just as fourth dimensional reptilians control us, they in turn are controlled by a fifth dimension. Michael Birkin argues that Icke's introduction of different dimensions allowed him to skip awkward questions about how reptilians got here. We talked about that. Icke briefly introduced the ideas about ancient astronauts in the Robots Rebellion, citing Milton William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse, and expanding it in The Truth Will Set You Free, citing Barbara Marciniak's Bringers of a New Dawn. Religious studies lecturer David G. Robertson thinks that it's connected to the 12th planet, combined with various other materials. As of 2003, Icke claims that reptilian bloodline includes all, then 43 American presidents, 3 British and 2 Canadian prime ministers, several Sumerian kings and Egyptian pharaohs, and a smattering of celebrities. Key bloodlines are said to include the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, various European aristocratic families, the establishment families of eastern United States, and the British House of Windsor. Icke claimed he saw British Prime Minister Edward Heath's eyes turn entirely jet black while the two men waited for a Sky News interview in 1989. He talks about this in his book, and it's quite good how he describes it. He confirmed to Andrew Neil in May 2016 that he believes the British royal family are shape-shifting lizards. In 2001, Icke said the Queen Mother was seriously reptilian. The Rothschilds, in Icke's opinion, are also blood-drinking Satan worshippers, which Daniel Allington and David Tabur argued in 2018 was part of a revival of medieval anti-Semitic attitudes towards Jews. So yeah, it's like the wandering Jew and the blood libel Jew is two old ideas, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. Okay, let's move on. Brotherhood aims and institutions. Icke states that at the apex of the Babylonian Brotherhood stand the global elite, and at the top of the global elite are what Icke has referred to as prison wardens. See, it says prison wardens here, but before it said prison warders. Maybe it was just a misspelling. Icke, or maybe I wasn't reading it properly. Icke claims that the Brotherhood's goal or their great work of ages, is a microchipped population, a world government, and a global Orwellian fascist state or New World Order, which he claims will be the post-truth era where freedom of speech is ended. Icke believes that the Brotherhood uses human anxiety as energy, and the Archons keep humanity trapped in a five-sense reality, so they can feed off the negative energy created by fear and hate. In 1999 he wrote, "Thus we have the encouragement of wars, human genocide, the mass slaughter of animals, sexual perversions, which create highly charged negative energy, and black magic ritual, and sacrifice which takes place on a scale that will stagger those who have not studied the subject." Icke proposes that human sacrifice to the gods in the ancient world was for the reptilians' benefit, especially sacrifice of children, because at the moment of death by sacrifice, a form of adrenaline surges through the body, accumulating at the base. You can see my brain flicking on then, at the base of the brain, and apparently more potent in children, claiming this is what the reptilians and the crossbreeds want. That's the adrenochrome conspiracy theory, isn't it? He suggests that the sacrifices continue to this day. He also claims that reptilians and their hybrid bloodlines engage in paedophilia and cannibalism. It is claimed that the Brotherhood either created or controls the United Nations, the IMF, the Round Table, Council on Foreign Relations, Chatham House, Club of Rome, Royal Institute of International Affairs, Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, as well as the media, military, CIA, MI6, Mossad, science, religion, the internet, with witting or unwitting support from the London School of Economics. It's an odd one to add on the end there. In an interview in February 2019, Icke was asked about his beliefs and replied, "They're very clever in their systems of manipulation, which is overwhelmingly psychological manipulation, because if you can manipulate perceptions to believe that Osama bin Laden was behind 9/11, then you'll get support to invade Afghanistan." Problem, reaction, solution. Problem, I need a wee. Reaction, I wet myself. Solution, I'm going to go clean myself up. Back in a second. Sorted. I was going to make a joke then, but it fizzled away in my head. Right. Where were we? Problem, reaction, solution. Icke uses the phrase problem, reaction, solution to explain how he believes the Illuminati agenda advances. According to Icke, the Illuminati guide us in the direction they desire by creating false problems, which allows them to give their desired solution to the problem they created. He also refers to this process as order out of chaos. In 2018, researchers looked into the psychological effects of Icke's belief system, argued that problem, reaction, solution resembles a misinterpretation of the Hegelian thesis, antithesis, and synthesis triad popularized by Chalabausch. This sort of echoes back to the beginning of what we were talking about, especially with that book, in that a lot of what David Icke says and advances is not necessarily new. It's not different. It might be a skewed version or a slightly reimagined version, but a lot of it is based on other people's work. And I think that sort of plays into what he's good at. He is good at lecturing, he's good at talking, he's good at presenting information. He might not be very good at actually coming up with ideas. Incidents and issues Icke attribute to the Illuminati or global elite include the Oklahoma City bombing, Dunblane, Columbine, 9/11, a lot of inside jobs, a lot of false flags, that kind of stuff. 7/7, global warming, chemtrails, water fluoridation, the death of Princess Diana, assassination of JFK, and Agenda 21. These incidents allow them to respond in whatever way they intend to act in the first place. Again, he's very broad with what he is willing to discuss. One of the methods Icke claims they use is creating fake opposites, or what they call opposames, such as the Axis and Allied powers of World War II, which he believes were used to revoke the creation of the European Union and the State of Israel. Icke argues that to ensure the outcome they want to have to control both sides. He believed the US presidents George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump are part of this false political divide, despite the presidency belonging to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Then going back to the Republicans, Icke claims that they are all pushing the same agenda of regime change in the Middle East. And I think that's one of the things that you'll see a lot in politics in the modern day. It's very centrist, isn't it? You've got far left and far right, but the majority of political parties are somewhere in the middle, even if they sort of veer a little bit either side. In Tales from a Time Loop, Icke argues that Illuminati created religious, racial, ethical, and sexual divisions to divide and rule humanity, but believes that many can only be controlled by the few if they allow themselves to be, and that power the Illuminati have is the power people give to them. Divide and rule is the bottom line of all dictatorships. Arab is turned against Jew, black against white, right against left. And plugging from the Matrix means refusing to recognise these illusory fault lines. We are all one. I refuse to see a Jew... Cut it off there. David Icke, I refuse to see a Jew as different from an Arab and vice versa. This makes me think of that Austin Powers joke, doesn't it? That Michael Caine says, there are two things I hate in this world: people intolerant of other people because of where they're from, and the Dutch. They're both expressions of one and need to be observed and treated the same. None more or less important than the other. I refuse to see black people, again, great quote, in terms that I would not see white, nor to see the left as I would not see the right. It's like poetry. How could it be any different except when we believe the illusion of division is real? If we do that, the Matrix has us. Icke's solution is peaceful non-compliance, which he believes will disempower the elite. It's like Freddy Krueger. Don't think about him, he won't exist. Saturn-Moon Matrix. The Moon Matrix is introduced in The Human Race to Get Off Your Knees. In Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More. In which Icke suggests that the Earth and the collective human mind are manipulated from the Moon, a spacecraft and interdimensional portal the reptilians control. The Moon Matrix is broadcast from that spacecraft to the human body, computer, specifically to the left hemisphere of the brain, which gives us our sense of reality. We are living in a dream world within a dream world, a matrix within the virtual reality universe, and it is being broadcast from the Moon. Unless people force themselves to become fully conscious, their minds are the Moon's minds. It's like he wants to one-up himself on the ranks of conspiratorials. It's like, oh, you think the reptiles are weird? You wait until you hear my Saturn-Moon hypothesis. Will Storr, writing in the Sunday Times in 2013, ponders if Icke's ideas suddenly pop into his head. On page 299 of Human Race Get Off Your Knees, Icke writes about working at his computer on the book and having the overwhelming feeling out of nowhere that the moon was not real. By real, I mean not a heavenly body, but an artificial construct or hollowed-out planetoid that has been put there to control life on Earth, which it does. I have pondered this possibility a few times over the years, but this time I just knew. It was like an enormous penny had suddenly dropped. It's kind of like when you're writing fiction and just ideas pop into your head. But he's putting them down as truth. The idea is further explored in Icke's Remember Who You Are, Remember Where You Are, Where You Come From, where he introduces the concepts of the Saturn-Moon Matrix. This is more recent conceptualization. The rings of Saturn, which Icke believes were artificially created by reptilian spacecraft, are the ultimate source of the signal, while the moon functions as an amplifier. He claims that the frequencies broadcast from the hexagonal storm on Saturn are amplified through the hollow structure of the artificial moon, keeping humanity trapped in a holographic projection. Interesting. That makes me think of the flat Earth and the, what do they call it in the flat Earth? Oh man, my brain is not working today. Flat Earth. What do they call it? No. Northern Europe. It's like something sphere, but it's not sphere. Geodesy. It's a cool word. So within Christianity, and that's one of the reasons why Flat Earth is kind of... We went through it, didn't we? We talked about it so much. Oh man, I need to put some like grease in my wheel. It's squeaking well loads. I am not going to be able to find it. But I will. What is it called? Flat Earth, sphere above. Let's try Flat Earth in the Bible. So this is what real research is like. Is the Bible a flat Earth book? Pillars, firmament. I can't actually see it, but it's come to my head. Yeah, firmament. That's what it makes me think of. Firmament. Is that how you spell it? Yeah, the heavens or sky. That was not worth the extra tomfoolery. I apologise. Yeah, that's what it makes me think of. Firmament. 5G and COVID-19. This is going to get this video blacklisted, but let's talk about it. So this is his new push. This is what he has, reason why he's been in the press and on various podcasts and stuff recently. David Icke has been identified by the Centre for Counter and Digital Hate, which we will get to in a minute because there is a whole leaflet on him, as a leading producer of misinformation about COVID-19 as well as anti-Semitic content. In April 2020, Icke claimed in a YouTube video on Brian Rose's London Real channel that there was a link between COVID-19 and 5G. The video was removed from the platform and YouTube tightened its rules, preventing its website from being used to spread conspiracy theories about COVID-19 pandemic. It was later also deleted from Facebook. Multiple phone masts were subject to arson attacks at this time, as well as telecom engineers being abused. Nick Cohen, in Observer, thought Icke was ambiguous as to whether the phone masts should be left alone. Icke said in a London Real interview, if 5G continues and reaches where they want to take it, human life as we know it is over, so people have to make a decision. So this is him sitting on the fence with it. So the reason he's so anti-5G is because it comes down to this vibrational effect. I don't think he quite gets the science behind it, which seems to be a running theme with this, but obviously his view of what is science is going to be different, isn't it? If that makes sense. So 5G, unless you don't know, is basically, it's the same, it's just waves, it's sound, it's radio waves, just at a much higher frequency. And because it's at a higher frequency, if you can get something that can transmit it and receive it at that higher frequency, then you can send more data, and that's basically what it's doing. But these kind of 5G, etc., various higher frequencies have been used for ages in lots of different ways, and because various TV channels are no longer using that, they've gone digital and they're not using analog frequencies as much. That's open space for things like 4G and 5G to use it instead, so mobile phone networks to use it instead. I can see where he's coming from in terms of if he believes that vibrations can affect how he feels, then he would be worried about a variant of those vibrations. But it's nothing to be scared of. And to link it with coronavirus just seems to be a bit sort of like they came out at the same time, therefore there must be a link. all of this has circled back around to what we did mention briefly, stopped him from being on social media. And probably why his website is more focused on news and articles and stuff like that is because he doesn't, he might be back on Twitter. I think Elon Musk has let him back on Twitter. But he was banned from Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, all of those for misinformation, which is one of those things, isn't it? Either side of it, whether you believe it or not, should someone be stopped from expressing an opinion? That's very hard when you've got so many people who are unable to discern for themselves whether something is worth believing in or not. So let's quickly have a look at, not you, let's get rid of you. Center for Countering Digital Hate. So this is the group, organisation, that's put together a little pamphlet, relatively detailed, about deplatform Icke, how big tech powers and profits from David Icke's lies and hate and why it must stop. So he puts something out there, it gets lots of clicks, that generates ad revenue, not just for himself, but also for the companies. And initially they didn't want to take it down, but eventually they did, under pressure from groups like this, but also governments. So introduction. So Center for Countering Digital Hate finds practical solutions to the instrumentalization of identity-based hate to polarize and undermine democracies worldwide. Using big words to confuse me, aren't you? Introduction. For many people, David Icke is a joke, whose public life ended when he declared himself the Son of God live on BBC 30 years ago. See, that's just mean. That's more mean than Wogan was. Why? In truth, that interview was the start of a new and profitable career as a professional conspiracy theorist, in which Icke has spent decades promoting bigotry and misinformation. Icke's popularity was turbocharged by social media, where he has an audience of 2 million followers. His website is one of the 1,000 most popular in the UK. Recent polling by Hope Not Hate revealed that more than half of the UK population have heard of Icke. COVID-19 pandemic, however, has clarified the threat David Icke poses to public safety. His conspiracy theories about COVID-19 have been viewed over 30 million times on social media, making him the leader producer of misinformation on the disease. David Icke is the leading producer of COVID-19 misinformation. Okay. These videos present an overarching super conspiracy that COVID-19 does not even exist and has been invented by a global cult. If you read his book, especially his most recent one, which I think is called The Trap, which I'll talk about it now, actually. It's on Audible. It's an audiobook. The production of it is awful. Now, I know I don't have an amazing setup here, but it's just some editing after the fact would be nice. After every line, it's... He's an old man. He's in his 70s now. He needs to breathe. But it's every time, as the sentence said. And then every little sound everywhere. Lots of those. I don't even know if my post-processing is going to remove all those noises. I hope not. But yeah, if you can get through that, it does sound like someone's just sitting next to you reading, which is kind of nice. But compared to professionally produced in a proper sound booth, read professionally, it doesn't sound great. But it is nice that he read it himself. In that book, he also describes that HIV isn't real, and AIDS isn't real. So he's definitely he's been on that bandwagon for a while. It's not just COVID-19. He really does sort of throw his hat in the ring with pretty much anything, doesn't he? So Icke's COVID-19 super conspiracy unites different hate actors. This sort of goes into the idea that although he's not aligned with anybody, a lot of people believe and follow and will listen to him who are aligned with actors who aren't the nicest people in the world. So Agenda 21 was the UN's sustainable development thing. It was basically just trying to, it's all just words, but it was them trying to be, you need this, you need this, you need this, energy needs to be green, you need to have enough food, you need to do this. It's very mediocre, but apparently that's a bad thing. Vaccines were used to control the world population. He claimed that vaccines caused diseases in 1994 when he wrote the US government had deliberately used hepatitis vaccine to study and affect young white male homosexuals with AIDS. Again, that's based on some truth, which is really hard to stomach, but the US government, I don't think we've actually done an episode on it. I'm sure we will at some point, infected certain populations with diseases to see what would happen, basically. And that's happened a lot in lots of other countries as well, which is pretty horrible. Bill Gates planned a pandemic. That's one thing that comes up a lot. Icke is using COVID-19 to promote a wider hate agenda. I wouldn't say hate agenda, but I can see where they're drawing the parallels. His wider agenda is very complex and nuanced, but on the surface, it can look a little bit anti-Jew. Again, he hates George Soros. I don't know why. He just hates him. Yep, they really don't like transgender people. Probably never have. Climate denialism. There's a lot of things that have come up about him. Icke is supported by a sophisticated misinformation network. Yep. They are well, I don't know if they're well funded, but they have an ever presence, don't they, on the internet. Other collaborators. Business models made possible by tech giants. Again, this was one of the things that they were trying to get at. A lot of the companies that own these social media platforms are very left-leaning and don't want to be part of what he's espousing, but it makes them money. So look, YouTube, they get up to 145,000 in ad revenue. Icke gets 192,000. They're making a lot of money together. So YouTube videos could be generating $300,000 worth of annual ad revenue. That's a lot of money. The same with, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. They'll all be making money. And that's why they've moved on to their own version of Netflix and that subscription-based model, because I think that's easier than getting adverts and advertisers. Deplatforming works. So other things that have, deplatformed people, Britain First, Alex Jones, Tommy Robinson. Yeah, interesting, and I'm not sure if I like it. It's kind of scary, isn't it, that you can get someone removed just through what they believe? And I think David Icke genuinely does believe what he's talking about, what he's discussing. Okay, so let's, before we get into his reception and its accusations and the sort of negative side of things, let's quickly just have a quick look at this. So this is an actual academic paper that was put into peer-reviewed International Journal for the Study of New Religions. This is David Icke's Reptilian Thesis and the Development of New Age Theodicy. And this is from 2013. But if you go on somewhere like ResearchGate, there's various versions of this, and just type in David Icke, you will get countless periodicals and journals based on him or talking about him in some way. Some were in the name, in Conspirituality and the Web, a case study of David Icke's media use, What Others Dare Not to Say, an anti-Semitic conspiracy fantasy and its YouTube audience, What Others Dare Not to, same thing. Esoteric themes in David Icke's conspiracy theories, David Icke Renegade, London Rear, that might be just him. But yeah, you get the idea. There are pages and pages discussing him, because it has become, it's gone from niche, relatively not important, to something that's being used or being seen by vast swathes of people and influencing them in lots of different ways, but influencing them nonetheless. And as a result, you get articles like this. So let's just read the abstract and see if there's any pretty pictures. Despite its considerable currency in popular culture, David Icke's Reptilian Thesis is almost always viewed academically as irrational and anti-Semitic. Here, I suggest that it be considered instead against A, traditional conceptualizations of evil, and B, the development of New Age milieu, the need to reconcile holistic, relativizing construction of evil with the perceived failure of the New Age to arrive was keenly felt in the New Age milieu through the 90s and 2000s. On an other had to exist, yet could not be constructed as human. The Reptilian Thesis introduces a theodicy into New Age of a globalized extraterrestrial other. Icke's Reptilian Thesis seeks to portray the extraterrestrial as that which is literally alien in order to explain away the perceived failure of the New Age. The New Age, Icke suggests, did not fail to arrive, but was prevented from arriving. The Reptilian Thesis is therefore not so much a departure from the New Age theodicy, but a reconfiguration of it. How very interesting. Holistic word is just used way too much in everything. Introduction. United Kingdom-based writer and lecturer David Icke is one of the most significant figures in the alternative milieu. He loves that word, doesn't he? Milieu. After initially positioning himself in New Age circles, Icke began to combine conspiracy theories with New Age beliefs during the mid-90s, and today commands a significant audience. His website steadily ranks in the top 10,000 worldwide. That is impressive. Right, let's have a look, see if we've got anything. Oh, it's just walls of text. So I have read through this briefly, and it's very interesting, but it basically just details how New Age and conspiracy theories, he merged them in order to gain a larger audience. Basically, that's basically the abstract. Conclusion. The Reptilian Thesis as New Age theodicy. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I don't care. This article has argued that the need to reconcile holistic, construction of evil with the perceived failure of the New Age was to arrive perceived in the New Age milieu. Oh God. Yeah, we just read this. We read this. Yep, we read this. This was literally in the abstract. You can't just put your conclusion in the abstract. Recalling Lewis and Kahn's analysis, 2005, Icke's thesis is a fierce critique of contemporary social and political structures, but by placing the responsibility for the rapaciousness and iniquity with the reptilians, Icke effectively removes responsibility from humanity. In this way, Icke's cosmology reconciles a holistic view of humanity and the cosmos with the conspiracist narrative of unseen malevolent agents. The Reptilian Thesis thus allows Icke to address the problem of evil within a pantheistic, global humanistic worldview. For Icke, the New Age did not fail to arrive, it was prevented from arriving. Icke's movement from New Age narratives to conspiracist narratives does not represent an abandonment of the central premise and aims of New Age. Rather, it represents a recontextualization for the demographic in a situation Alice Bailey never imagined. This, I argue, goes some way towards understanding the popular appeal of his work and the hybridization of New Age and conspiracism more broadly. That was a lot of words, but basically that's why he's popular. That's what they're trying to get at, which I get. It makes sense. Right. Reception. Interest in Icke's conspiracy theories is widespread and has cut across political, economic and religious divides. His audience has held a wide range of beliefs, uniting individuals and left and right-wing groups, from New Agers to ufologists, as well as far-right Christian patriots and the UK neo-Nazi group Combat 18, which supports his writings. Icke's work is representative of a major global countercultural trend. American novelist Alice Walker is a admirer of Icke's works, along with comedian Russell Brand, musician Mick Fleetwood. Icke has emerged as a professional conspiracy theorist with a global countercultural movement that combines New World Order conspiracism, the Truther movement, and anti-globalization with an extraterrestrial conspiracist subculture. Accusations of Anti-Semitism. So here we get into the nitty-gritty of... yes. There is a strong strain of anti-Semitic conspiracy theorizing that makes ufological connections, including especially the work of Milton William Cooper and David Icke. Both are controversial, but still well known in both right-wing conspiracists and ufological subcultures. That's from Christopher R. Roth, Ufology as Anthropology, Race Extraterrestrials and the Occult. The Anti-Defamation League, in 2018, there is no fair reading of Icke's work that could be seen as not anti-Semitic. However, Icke has repeatedly denied the accusation that he is anti-Semite. In 2001, he was questioned by John Ronson. Icke declared that the Protocols is evidence of not a Jewish plot, but a reptilian plot. He also said the families in positions of great financial power obsessively interbreed with each other. But I'm not talking about one Earth race, Jewish or non-Jewish. I'm talking about a genetic network that operates through all races, the bloodline being a fusion of human and reptilian genes. He really does double down on it, and I have never seen him say or even try and hint at that when he's talking about reptiles, he's talking about something other than reptiles. Again, this is a Truth Set You Free with the Schindler's List, and I strongly believe that a small Jewish clique which has contempt for the mass of Jewish people worked with non-Jewish to create the First World War. Yeah, he's talked about that a couple of times, that the Jews were behind the Holocaust and all that kind of stuff, which, again, as we've been saying quite a few times, is not new. That's not a new idea. Yeah. In his book UFOs, Conspiracy Theories and the New Age, David G. Robertson disputes that Icke is anti-Semitic, saying that it's just easier for some people to accept that when Icke says reptiles, he really means Jews, than that he literally means extraterrestrial reptiles control world politics. And I think that is the crux of it. They're trying to rationalize something that might not necessarily be able to be rationalized. And hopefully we'll get into that more when I do an episode on anti-Jew, anti-Semite, anti-Jewish conspiracies. And also when we do a full episode on reptiles as humanoids. Okay, other responses. So there's people just trying to mix it with lots of different things. Again, he's never really been part of that. He'll present himself to various different audiences, but he never really cares what they think about him, which is really interesting. And then there's his selected works at the end. Yeah, look at all the books he's done. It is a lot. Yeah, The Trap, that's what it's called. What is, how it works, and how we escape its illusions. That is available as a book as well as an audiobook on Audible. I'm not sponsored by Audible, not after the incident. But yeah, let me just go through and have a look. Okay, we did that one, 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 we did that one. Cool. So, I've got two more different articles that I want to look at, and then we'll call it a day. So, Mocked Prophet. What is David Icke's appeal? So this is one of, why have I spent the last hour and 50 minutes talking about David Icke? Let's have a read and see if it comes to, actually works. Oh, let's do that for a second. David Icke is famous for believing the world is run by lizards. So why do thousands turn out to hear him talk? If I could get a day to listen to him in person, I would. I have listened to his 12-hour lectures. He is very good at talking at people about stuff. Of course, it's terribly easy to laugh at David Icke. Not with these gills, it isn't. So this is a preview from an actual winter 2014 edition of the New Humanist. That's not very fun. That's not very funny. They could have done. That's pretty good drawing. They could have done something better with that. Lame. It's been a strange year for David Icke. So this is 2014. So this is before COVID, isn't it? This is before his return, I guess. Although the same could be said about any year since 1990, when he was first contacted by the psychic healer who shared with him the secrets that he so famously later revealed on Wogan. In some ways, you could say he's been vindicated. For years, he has claimed that people operating at the highest levels of the establishment were members of a secret paedophile networks. Claims that now routinely appear on the front page of our newspapers. Many of the people at the centre of these stories were even specifically named by Icke in print years ago. Maybe he was right all along. Disappearing dossiers and inquiry chiefs with close links to those associated with the claims do little to discourage the idea of an elaborate cover-up. But even on this issue, Icke's credibility is compromised by his habit of naming more or less everyone and claiming that they are all part of the same network. Again, casting a wide net. Inevitably, he's going to be right once in a while. After all, if you throw enough shit at a stopped clock, some of it will stick. And throw shit he does. On stage in front of thousands of people at Wembley Arena on a bright Saturday in October, he names several high-ranking living politicians, both here and in the US, and claims that they are paedophiles. How can he do this without fear of legal repercussions? Because no one will want to engage with him. This man is famous for believing the world is run by lizards. Except that's a very crude description of his theories. In brief, he argues that the universe is made up of vibrational energy. The world as we perceive it is just a holographic projection of this. Time is an illusion. There is no past and no future, only an infinite now. Humans are infinite awareness. We are consciousness. All that there is, has been, and ever can be. But we are victims of a conspiracy. An interdimensional race of beings called the Archons have hijacked our world and have stopped us from realizing our true potential. Instead, they keep us trapped in five-sense reality, feeding off the negative energy created by fear and hate. Frequencies broadcast from hexagonal storm on Saturn are amplified through the hollow structure of our artificial moon, whereas a standard conspiracy theorist might be satisfied by not believing that man walked on the moon. Icke doesn't even believe it's the moon itself. A genetically modified human Archon elite of shape-shifting reptilians manipulate global events to keep us in a state of fear. Only by walking up to the truth and filling our hearts with love can we defeat the archontic influence. Speaking such truth is difficult. Many would find such a message hard to believe, and so Icke repeatedly emphasizes the importance of remaining true to yourself. Speak in your heart regardless of what other people might think. True geniuses are rarely recognised during their lifetime and are often mocked, he tells the Wembley audience, before mentioning how he was mocked after appearing on Wogan. He really does have a chip on his shoulder when it comes to that. The truly brave aren't worried by ridicule, he adds, before reminding us that he has been ridiculed. There is an obvious tension in using Wembley Arena as a platform for his message. Time is an illusion, he tells us at the end of the first section, before asking us to be back at exactly 1 hour. As people file out of the building for lunch, security staff scan the barcodes of everyone's ticket and check people's bags for bottles and liquid as they re-enter the building. Stewards stroll up and down the aisles throughout the day telling people not to take photos. Thousands of people sit in silence as they are told what brave and original freethinkers they are, politely applauding the numerous well-crafted gags Icke weaves into his 10-hour PowerPoint presentation. There's also a tension in what he's saying. He ridicules scientists for displaying the arrogance of ignorance and repeatedly refers to the dogma dorkings. He mocks experts on the news who begin their sentences with "what we know is," because in reality they know nothing. But then he repeatedly cites mainstream science to back up his claims, and then, perhaps self-aware, he repeats in a mocking tone, "what we know is." Don't believe that anyone tells you what anyone tells you, he says from the stage in front of thousands of people listening to his every word with awe. But while it's easy to dismiss him, his message is fundamentally a positive one, which might hint at why he appeals to some. At points during his lengthy talk, his voice begins to crack. The emotion gets to him. If we want a world of love and peace, he says through stifled sobs, we have to be loving and peaceful with everyone, even people we don't like. Yes, it's a simplistic message, but it's difficult to really object. We need to love each other more. The logic behind every single step he's taken might be completely wrong. It is completely wrong. Yet somehow he's ended up in almost the right place. There's very little difference between this core message and that of Russell Brand's Revolution, and yet Brand appears on Newsnight and Icke is mocked. But what's the difference really? Oh right, Archons. The day ends with a series of musicians and bands, his son Gareth, a Canadian band called The Ancient Order, a reggae group called Rebel Control, a singer called Louisa Love. The crowd visibly thins with each successive act. At one point, Icke is joined on stage by a group of dancers, the Love Tribe, and dances an Irish jig. It's a strange way to end, but then what else would you expect? I was going to do one more article, but I think I'm going to stop it there. I think that was a really good place to stop it. If you're interested in David Icke, check out his books. You can buy them on eBay pretty cheap. They are often... They do have some pictures, but for the most part they are just walls of text, and that's why I prefer to listen to them. There are audiobooks, but they're not the greatest quality, although you can get text-to-speech programs that will just read PDFs to you, and I've done that with various versions of his book. Oh, look at him on the back there, looking all handsome. His life is interesting. His story is interesting. The various conspiracies that he espouses are very interesting. Whether you believe in them or not, he clearly has a passion and a very good way of delivering his information. Thank you very much for watching, and join me again next time for Conspiracy 101. Bye, everyone.